Kalispera. Hi, everyone. You'll excuse me for speaking in English. And you'll probably agree with me that crisis is a good way to wake up after lunch and spice up our afternoon. So during the morning, what I learned from my very limited Greek, we've discussed a lot climate crisis and how it affects us in Greece as this nation. Within climate and beyond climate, I think we all here understand that we live in a very, very dynamic era, looking at what we experienced in recent years with floods, with forest fires, with COVID-19, with economic changes. We can pretty much get to the understanding that having a crisis is not a question of if, but a question of when and how prepared we will be. We as hoteliers, with tourism businesses, with destinations, either on the DMO or the NTO level. And if we're talking about preparedness, so broadly speaking, we can pin up three major pillars for preparedness. The first one is crisis resilience, which is a fancy way to ask what is our level of adaptive capacity and how we can increase this adaptive capacity, not towards one specific type of crisis, but in overall increase our availability or capacity to handle all kinds of both fast and slow changes. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar has to do with crisis management. Each one of us sitting in this room can more or less foresee what type of crises are the most likely to happen based on their unique location, their unique DNA, the type of audience they're serving, their level of diversification, and so forth. And based on that, we can already prepare in advance a crisis management plan. The third pillar of preparedness is recovery marketing. In recovery marketing, we're trying to create in advance some kind of a plug-and-play marketing response strategy that will help us to limit what we refer to as the recovery gap. And the recovery gap is the period between the physical crisis ends. Let's say that we have fires, and when these fires stop and the smoke is clear, so the physical stage of the crisis ended. And there is the perceived crisis, which is till which point tourism returns to full scale. And the gap between the two is the recovery gap. And as we're going to see in the following slide, this recovery gap could be quite long, and for many businesses also quite painful. And we try to discuss how recovery marketing can help us to reduce or even to eliminate this gap. So Venice has a history of floods, and in November 2019, Venice has experienced its worst floods ever, worst flood in the last 50 years, with the level of water reaching up to here, 2 centimeters above my head. And the headlines in the news were as follows, okay? Venice was perceived as a city that didn't manage to cope with that type of change. And the message was that we have a huge, incredible crisis that Venice is not able of handling, not capable of handling. How long did it take them to remove all the excess water from Venice and to restore the operation of the city? About 4 days. However, if we're talking about the gap between the crisis itself and the perceived crisis, the recovery gap, so we can see that in the first months of 2019, so 2019 was performing significantly better than 2018. This is the numbers that are in red. However, in November, we can see that this picture changes, and in December, 2019 suddenly performs worse than 2018. just for hoteliers in Venice, they have lost over 1.5 million euros in earning, resulting from the mismanagement of recovery marketing and from the recovery gap. So that's one way to approach things. Let's look at exactly the opposite approach for managing things. And for this, we will travel to Glacier National Park on the border between United States and Canada. This national park, since it started to record wildfires, there was only one single year in which they didn't have wildfire. In other words, they're having wildfires as part of life, okay? Every year they have wildfires. Sometimes they are more severe, sometimes they are less severe, sometimes they last for weeks, sometimes they last for months. By understanding that, they have taken a marketing recovery approach of business as usual, saying this is part of the game. So on your right-hand side of the screen, you can see what they are describing in the first page of their website, how they communicate wildfires towards visitors. They're saying this is the cycle, this is nature, this is part of our life, this is part of ecology. No crisis. It's not a crisis. This is ecology. When the winter comes, when spring comes, this is not a crisis. And on the left side, on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see this is a testimonial taken from Google Maps of what people are writing when visiting the park during wildfires. So if the park doesn't make a crisis out of it, so does the visitors. It's all about how the event is being managed and how the event is being communicated. In 2017, Glacier National Park had one of its worst wildfires in its history. The wildfires started in the 10th of August. For 2 months, till the middle of October, they didn't even have control of the fire. In October, they managed to gain control of the fire, but the fires only completely took out when snow started to fall in November. Okay, so 3 months of forest fire, and at the same time, 2017 was their best year of tourism. Okay, this is the number of million visitors per year. In other words, if you manage it correctly, zero recovery gap. You have a situation, you manage the situation, you lead the situation, and your visitors follow. The third case I would like to share with you is the case of Israel, which is still a case in progress, a very complicated one, serving as the recovery marketing advisor for the Israeli Ministry of Tourism, and it's a very complex, challenging. By the way, I will say on a side note that 2023 has been an incredible year for Greek tourism when it comes to inbound tourism from Israel, 25% increase, and I suspect that 2024 is going to be even better compared to 2023. Back to the crisis. So you don't need to have a crystal ball to know that if you live in Israel and you own a tourism business, so at a certain point of time, there's going to be a crisis hitting you right in your face, right? For this purpose, the Israeli Ministry of Tourism has prepared and has been preparing probably for the last 30 years crisis communication, crisis marketing, crisis recovery plans. They keep updating them. And these plans have lots of blanks written in them, and they operate in a plug-and-play mode, which means that when a crisis starts, so the most recent recovery marketing plan has been put into action, we put inside the data, and based on that, the people at the ministry know how to react and where to focus their efforts on. one of the things that was learned throughout the years is that tourism, in times of tourism crisis, is not a switch that you turn on and off, but it's a very agile system. And within this agile system, you can identify audiences, segments, age group, source markets, travel motivation, etc., of people that are willing to travel to your destination even in times of crisis or immediately following a crisis. So it's not a question if people will come, but the question is who will come and how we can make them come. And obviously, the first responder are domestic tourism. In the last few years, the Ministry of Tourism in Israel has invested in developing marketing channels, especially social media marketing channels, that are targeting the Israeli audience in order, not for day-to-day, in day-to-day they invest zero budget or close to zero budget in domestic tourism. They're very much oriented toward inbound. But it was very important for them to create these channels because we know that when crisis will happen, the ministry will need effective marketing channels to start and attract this market to do whatever we want them to do. So to conclude our discussion, when you're coming to ask yourself regarding when a crisis will happen and how prepared I will be, there are three things you should consider. First of all, the Americans are saying that if you are failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So you definitely need to have a plug-and-play recovery marketing strategy that will be there for you when the crisis starts. Secondly, you should not treat all your audience, or you should not put all your audiences into one basket, but look at different audiences and understand how they respond to crisis. For example, young travelers respond better compared to older travelers and travelers with children. Travelers from some countries, some Western European countries respond very well to crisis. On the other hand, Chinese travelers respond very bad to crisis. So you should have all these different criteria and different groups within your strategy. And last thing, in your strategy, there should be a significant role for influencer, PR, and earned media, things such as TBX and others, because when it comes to crisis, this is not a very trustworthy thing to say, I'm okay, I'm safe, there's no crisis here. But when you get testimonials, when you get PR, when you get other people to say that business is as usual, so it's okay, and this creates the right message. Thank you very much, and I hope 2024 will be a great year with no crisis.